The long-awaited community day for Timburr is just around the corner, and for some people who are watching this video, maybe they already got their Timburr community day. But today I wanted to talk about Conkeldurr, which is of course the fully evolved form of Timburr, and talk about whether or not it is any good for Pokémon GO right now. That's what this video is going to be all about. Let's get right into it. Hey, how's it going everyone? It's me, it's Jinsula. I hope you're having a good day and welcome to today's Pokémon GO video. Today we're going to be talking about Conkeldurr, which of course just got shot into the spotlight mainly because it just received a community day move, and a lot of players are speculating on whether or not this move will actually make this Pokemon any good for the Go Battle League, or if it will retake the spot as the #1 raid attacker for fighting types. Unfortunately, when it comes to the latter, that's still going to be held by Terrakion. It is a much easier Pokemon to get compared to a Terrakion, so of course it could be a great second option. I'll get more into that later, but first let's get into the different stats and details for this Pokemon. Conkeldurr is a pure fighting type Pokemon, which means it's going to have a weakness against fairy type, flying type, and psychic type attacks. It's also going to have resistances to bug type, rock type, and dark type attacks. It's going to be weather boosted by cloudy weather, just like with every other fighting type. This is mainly only going to matter if you're using Conkeldurr in raids. Now, in terms of the base stats, it has a really high base attack stat of 243, a respectable defense stat of 158, and a really good stamina stat of 233. In terms of the rank 1 IVs for Conkeldurr, it's going to be 3 attack, 15 defense, and 15 health for the Great League, and when it comes to the Ultra League, it's going to be 0 attack, 13 defense, and 15 health. Now when it comes to the fast attacks that Conkeldurr will come with, it has the very powerful fighting type fast move, Counter, and it also can come with Poison Jab. Now in terms of the charge attacks, it can come with Dynamic Punch, Brutal Swing, Stone Edge, and Focus Blast. Brutal Swing is of course the brand new Community Day move, so you will need an elite charge TM in order to get that move on your best Conkeldurr. Now, when it comes to Conkeldurr's moves, it's actually really insane that it has both Counter and Dynamic Punch. It's actually what makes this Pokemon one of the top fighting type Pokemon in the game. This is an extremely powerful fighting type move combination. Counter is one of those moves that deals a lot of damage, but also generates an insane amount of energy as well. That's going to allow you to use Dynamic Punch as often as possible, and that move is a very hard-hitting fighting type charge attack, so you're definitely going to get a lot of power out of this Pokemon. The really nice thing is that Conkeldurr has a bit of bulk on top of a really high attack stat. I really like the fact that this Pokemon will have much higher TDL compared to Pokemon like Shadow Machamp. It's going to be really good for raid battles, especially if you need fighting type raid damage, and it's also going to be pretty decent with PvP as well. It does have some really good stats for PvP as a closer or a safe switch, and it also has a really good moveset as well. Even if you don't go with Brutal Swing, you could also go with Stone Edge to give it a bit of type coverage. But honestly, Brutal Swing is going to be your absolute best bet. The one type you will want to watch out for in PvP is of course going to be fairy types. But if you can avoid putting Conkeldurr up against a fairy type, you're going to be pretty much good to go, considering the amount of Pokemon that Conkeldurr can deal with. When it comes to raid battles, Conkeldurr will unfortunately fall behind a bunch of other Pokemon, but at least it's going to hold its own. You won't severely be punished by spending the Stardust to max out Conkeldurr because it really is a very decent Pokemon for raid battles, and when it comes to PvP, there is a lot of potential there as well. So yeah, in terms of the stats, Conkeldurr is an absolute monster, but it is unfortunately going to fall just a little bit short compared to Terrakion when it comes to raid damage, and of course, there's going to be plenty of Shadows and Megas that are going to be much better than this Pokemon, but I do think it is a solid second option, considering that getting yourself a bunch of maxed out Terrakions is going to be extremely difficult. It's going to be much easier for you to pick up a whole bunch of maxed out Conkeldurrs. And now that its shiny form is out, I'm pretty sure you're going to be able to get yourself a really good one in lucky trades if you have a bunch of these stocked up. If you manage to pick yourself up a bunch of high IV Conkeldurrs during Community Day, then I do think it is actually worth investing into them so that you have a bunch of fighting types that you could use. It's going to be slightly better than a non-Shadow Machamp, and it's going to be slightly less than a Terrakion, so it is actually pretty good to have in your collection because when it comes to fighting types, there's not that many great options available when it comes to raid type DPS. Now, when it comes to the Go Battle League, that's going to be a different story. Conkeldurr actually improves quite a bit with the addition of its new Community Day move, Brutal Swing. It could be somewhat of a viable threat within the Ultra League and Master League, and maybe in some specialty cups within the Great League as well. But considering that the Great League is just filled with a lot of different Pokemon that have the fighting typing, I don't necessarily think that this Pokemon will slot in within that meta. But when it comes to the Ultra League as well as the Master League, there might be some cases where Conkeldurr may actually be your #1 option. In the Ultra League, its biggest competition is of course going to be Machamp, but Conkeldurr actually has a lot more bulk than Machamp, so you might actually be able to win out in a couple more matchups. And the nice thing about Conkeldurr is that Brutal Swing does actually give it a lot of really good type coverage, whereas with Machamp, the only type coverage you really have is against flying types, which there's not too many of those. And when it comes to the Master League, it could actually be a pretty good option, considering that when it comes to the Master League, there's not a whole lot of good fighting types. Like, Machamp is going to be way too squishy, and Terrakion is going to have way too many weaknesses, but Conkeldurr seems to be a really good option in that field. It could essentially be your #1 answer against Pokemon like Melmetal and Dialga, and of course, Brutal Swing could be your answer against a lot of Pokemon like Mewtwo. So yeah, you do not want to ignore the significance of Conkeldurr. It could actually be really good in PvP moving forward. But of course, it's not necessarily going to break the meta, which I'm really glad it doesn't, because when it comes to Pokemon Go, it's always really hard to actually adjust to a lot of these big meta changes. Like at the time when we had Spheal Community Day, Walrein completely took over the meta for both the Great League and Ultra League, and it doesn't look like Conkeldurr is going to do that, but at least it's going to be improved enough where you will actually start seeing them within the Go Battle League. Rather than taking over any of the leagues, it's basically going to just add to the diversity of them, so that's always a huge plus, and I'm really glad that that is the case with this Pokemon. Now, one more thing that I want to talk about with Conkeldurr before I end this video is the fact that this Pokemon is future-proof. It is going to be a really good fighting type Pokemon for years to come. Considering that Pokemon like Machamp have kind of fallen off when it comes to raid damage, this Pokemon is going to continue to be one of the top tier fighting types. And the nice thing is, eventually the shadow form of Timburr is going to be released. And when that happens, this Pokemon will by far become one of the best fighting types that you could get. Even though that title is currently being held by Terrakion as well as with Shadow Machamp, I do think Shadow Conkeldurr is going to change things up quite drastically once that's eventually released. And the very fact that it now has Brutal Swing in its arsenal is only going to make it even better. So I'm really excited for that prospect, but as of right now, it's still decent to have some of these maxed out in your collection. And yeah, with that said, that's going to be it for this video. Leave your thoughts regarding Conkeldurr in the comment section down below. Did you end up getting yourself a really good one from Timburr Community Day? Definitely share all of that and let's have a great discussion. And thank you so much for making it to this point in the video. If you ended up enjoying it, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe if it's your first time here, and don't forget that little bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I upload videos. And I want to give a quick shout out to all of my patrons on my Patreon family. You make this channel content possible. If you want to support my channel in a big way, make sure you go and check out the links in the description below. For all of the members of my Patreon family, they get a permanent spot on my in-game friends list. So if you want to interact with me in some way within Pokemon Go, like with remote raids or the friendship system, then make sure you go and check out my Patreon. And if you want to support my channel non-monetarily, you could always do so by following me on social media. My handle is @Jinsula, and I'm on the following platforms. Alright, and that's going to be it. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all later.